So we all know that the Women's World Championship match is underway, and it's between two great Chinese players. And I wanted to show a game from the current world champion, Wenjun, who is defending her title right now for the fourth time. So the game I'll show is one of the key games that essentially made her a world champion. It comes from the final match of the Women's World Championship in 2018, back when it was held in the knockout format. So you had to win the World Cup format in a knockout, and so this was in the final game. She was down 2-1 in the match against Kateryna Lagno, and so she needed to win this game to force a tiebreak, and then she did, and eventually won the tiebreak. So we're gonna check this game that she had to win with the black pieces.
Nerves of Steel. Yeah, let's check it out. She had black pieces. Okay.
Yeah. And she chose to play a Sicilian, and when it comes to the opening, it became something like the Rossolimo. So these positions might seem closed, but and boring, but in reality, they're really rich strategically, and they can become dangerous at any moment, and they can open up very quickly. So, we always establish the plans as we usually do. So White's plans are usually to take over the center with something like c4, with something like d4, and you can prepare it, or other central plans like the rook coming here and then the pawn going here to kick the knight. Bishop c6 at a good moment is sometimes good, and doubling the pawns. So White has a lot of plans, and then black plans are to castle eventually, but first they need to get this knight out. So there's a couple of ways to do that. It can either go to e7 and then maybe support a d5 pawn break. It can also go, interesting one is go to h6, and through f6 go here. But that depends on the type of position, and it really depends on what White does, if they open the center immediately or not. But there's a lot of plans. Knight d4 exists too, and now there's too many arrows, so I'll stop making them.
Yeah, but it just shows how many options you have, and why the theory is so brutal in openings like this.
Yeah, and Wenjun chose a different plan, which is to play e5, which is also very common in these positions. So although we do see that there's a weakness here, but it does stop a very important plan of White, to play d4. So now White can never really do it in a convenient way, and it's a very common one to just close everything off in the center and start a different type of attack.
I have to say, this is an interesting choice to try to close the game when you are 1 point behind and literally have to win, right? So this is an interesting choice. Why do you think she decided to go for this? Because she was just very knowledgeable with this, or was it in her preparation?
E5 is one of the main moves in this position, so I'm pretty sure it was prepared. And just because it's closing, that doesn't mean that it's suddenly, a draw. There's so many pieces already, there. Yeah. There's so many pieces there that it's very far from being a draw.
Gotcha.
And in fact, something like this might even be better than something where it opens up, queens get traded, and then it's an endgame. So this might have even been a better option. She didn't want to trade too many pieces. And she got a pretty good position out of the opening.
Yeah, f5 looks nice at one point.
Exactly. So I was just going to ask, which plan would you go for? And you already replied that you want to go for the f5 plan, which is correct.
Everything points in that direction, right? Yeah.
Right. You could also try to go for some b5 plan in these positions, but I really like f5 better. Yeah. So we first have to prepare it somehow with h6, then king, and then f5. And that's exactly what she did. The knight went on the square that it wants, and f5 eventually happened. And there's a surprising moment here. So how would you recapture this pawn? Her opponent took that pawn, and she didn't want to let that pawn run, and now it's interesting how to recapture.
I guess so there's 4 pieces which can capture this pawn. I would go first, take the bishop, then the knight, then the rook, and maybe the last. No, well, maybe the last would be the rook and then the pawn. And since you're asking as a surprise, I guess it's neither the bishop nor the knight.
No, it's actually she took with the pawn in the game,
Huh.
but it was better to take with the knight or with the
Okay.
bishop. The rook, I didn't even consider.
Yeah, you don't consider that,
because
of course, yeah.
no, it's not bad. It's just like if you're going to capture with the piece, you might as well capture with the knight.
Exactly, yeah.
It's belongs here a little bit more, or the bishop is good too. So this one is probably best because now there's never any d4 pawn breaks and the knight is standing well. But the reality is that g takes f5 maybe missed or underestimated a really interesting idea from white. So although this looks very typical, in the King's Indian, we always want to take back
Oh
with the pawn, for
goodness,
example.
I can see it. Is it the
Yeah,
knight check on g5?
exactly. So
Oh
knight
my
g5
goodness.
was possible. It doesn't lose, but to me this looks really
That
dangerous,
looks
right?
crazy, yeah.
So you see that capturing like this doesn't work. The king cannot really come back to the g8 square, and something like this would be just losing for black, and there is no way to defend.
There's
So
no
the
way
way
to
to
defend, yeah.
so the way to protect against it is to go forward with the king,
Insane.
which is insane in itself. But then white comes back, and maybe white just didn't see a continuation. The king will go back and be fine, but still this looks pretty good for white. The knight is a bit strange, but if you ever want queen h5 ideas, then that might be the right place. And maybe they just also didn't want to let black have such a strong center. But I'm not sure. This looks unclear. I don't know. I like that for white, I would like that there's a weak king, but there's still not really a clear solution. So Lagno didn't choose to play that.
Yeah.
And she went for b4.
But she probably saw that too, right? She must have seen that.
I just think she didn't see anything convincing after just king to g6 and the knight has to go away.
Wow.
So maybe that.
So hot this game already in just like, I don't know, how many moves?
13 moves.
13 moves, yeah.
So now knight g6, now there's no more knight g5. The g5 square is more or less protected with the queen as well. And so it became a bit of a more maneuvering part of the game. And I'll make the next few moves, which are just developing for both sides. And we get here already. I think black has really consolidated really well. At least I like it a lot better now than before, that all the pieces are working and there's a lot more threats and they just look more coordinated than white's pieces. So I like it for black, but how would you continue to play here? So the question is more, would you pursue a plan on the king side or on the queen side?
Well, since the G file is already open, I would go for the king side, of course. I think it might... Yeah, well, there's a lot of pieces there already, so why not? Yeah, I would commit to the king side, exactly.
So that's what she did in the game. There's also some good plans on the queen side. So both answers are good in their own ways. For example, on the queen side, you could try to go for something like c4. And the idea is that if there's a pawn recapture, then these pawns are just not good, and you sacrifice it for a good reason, and you'll probably regain it in the next couple of moves, and the bishop is bad. So it's more of a positional sacrifice. And if they take back with the bishop, then you could go for something like this with initiative and with a bishop pair, and with this bishop working well, this bishop potentially working, something like that. Although this pawn sacrifice wasn't, it was just a way to play on the queen side a bit more. Or you could just prepare it with rook c8. That also works if anybody came up with that. But maybe most people would agree with the king side plan, and that's what she did in the game.
Good for her.
Yeah, of course, she had to win, so there was not really another choice. So knight went to h4, and here black missed a win with the idea that I mentioned, which is a bit crazy, but it was it was a winning position after c4. So the idea is that now it has all the previous benefits of this move, but it also cuts off the queen from the defense. So you can't really just recapture calmly. So you're gonna have to take here.
No other way, exactly.
And there's an intermediate capture like this, which puts into question, which puts the pawn into question, the king into question, and the knight too, because it has to retreat.
Yeah, that looks bad.
Something like this looks pretty good for black. Still, still no checkmate or anything, but it was, we would consider it maybe a missed opportunity for a good advantage. Instead, she played bishop h8 just to open up the g file, which also works.
There's the queen. From one side of the board to the other.
Yeah, so it's the queen there is simultaneously to protect and to maybe also attack here on h6. If you accidentally move the rook, then there might be, even a checkmate coming. So it's for both reasons. And what I really like about Ji Wenjun's play here is that every move that she made, it has a clear purpose. So once she started the attack, there's always, the rook's doubled right away. Now the queen came here, and it has even better if it has two purposes. So we attack here, plus we're supporting the attack and playing f4 in the future. So once she started attacking, she doesn't want to let the initiative go, and that's what makes for a really good attack. So now Kateryna played c4 to protect that knight.
Oh, that makes her bishop really weak, right?
It does, but it also attacks this knight. So maybe that was her intention, that now this knight has to move, or else she will take it and maybe win these pawns in the end game or something. But do you think, as black, would you want to start the attack right away with f4? Would you be courageous and play it right away, or prepare it a bit more?
I wonder how to prepare it a bit more, or what the moves could be. So I'm always looking at why don't we take out this knight on d5? Because it's so strong, right? I don't, I've thought about it since a while. I mean, yeah, of course our bishop pair is gone, but our white squared bishop is just bad. So if we take away the knight, the pawn has to take back. That doesn't make the bishop so much stronger on a2. And then we can push our bishop to f6, ask the queen where she wants to go to, and then we could commit to f4 maybe. Yeah, so I would prepare a little bit more, let's say it like that. But but who am I to know?
It is interesting that you mentioned the capture. It's not what she played, but I do understand why you would want to ruin the pawns and just get rid of this good knight. I think the reason is that this light squared bishop is actually has more potential than this knight. This knight is already at its best, and it doesn't actually attack much of our pieces. So I think she actually really wanted to keep this light squared bishop, given that white's king is really weak on those squares. So maybe she wanted it to stay, and if anything, come to f3, make some threats there. So I think she just wanted to keep this bishop more for the long-term benefits of it, and she can take at any other point. So maybe it's that this bishop is just a really good piece because the white weaknesses are exactly on that square. So it was best to actually go for f4 right away, but it involved a lot of calculations. And the reason here is that after bishop takes here, she would have to not take back, but she would have to find bishop to f6, which looks like, why would you ever do that and give a piece with check? And now white is just going to be up a piece. But this is actually winning for the reason that the queen gets trapped, which is something we've been mentioning, is that the queen looks a bit uncomfortable and it gets trapped in a nice way with rook g3 eventually, both with the check and the discovered attack on the queen. So something like this was good, but bishop f6 I find is a really difficult move to play, and you would also have to calculate other retreats. So bishop b1 would be a bit dangerous with the opening of the file and things like that. So it's not completely clear, but f4 was the right moment to do it after some calculation and finding the piece sacrifice like that.
That I didn't see.
So she played this right away, and that exchanged the bishop for the knight. So white would have a bishop pair now, but at least we kept our good bishop, and the rooks are going to be back. So white equalized now, but black is still on the offensive. So I think you would still choose to be on the black side and to continue the attack. And we will soon get to the beautiful tactic that actually made Ji Wenjun win this game. So it ends really nicely. And but already, I bet that this is exactly what you want in a game where you need a win. So all of her attacking moves make sense, and they're actually usually the correct thing to do in the position. So it's also justified by the tactics. So there was now only one saving move for white. White had to find queen to h5, which is not really clear why, but well, it is clear why, but it just doesn't look like it should be the only winning move. White played a very logical solution to this problem with the battery on the g file. They just moved away the king, but that turned out to be the final blunder of the game. So try to find how Ji Wenjun ended the game and forced the tiebreak in the World Championship.
Okay, so I'm guessing rook takes g3. Pawn takes back.
Yep.
Rook takes g3. And now the queen has a problem because the next move is most likely going to be queen b7 check.
That's a really nice check that you found here. It's an odd way to checkmate, but this is a really good threat. And if they just take us, then what do you think about this position?
Well, although it's an imbalance, but I think black will win this. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah, the bishops are just too weak, and the king is so open that has to win. Yeah.
Exactly. So 2 rooks against the queen sometimes puts up a good resistance and sometimes even wins against the queen, but definitely not here when one of the kings is just so bad and there's so many weaknesses. So that's true. This would be winning, and rook g3 was one of the winning solutions. And there was a second winning solution too. There's a second one too.
Okay.
You can try to find it, but I feel like you already found a really good idea that was related to it. And it's all about this diagonal. So instead of the queen going there, we can have the bishop come back to c8, which is what she played in the game. And it's a beautiful way to activate the bishop, how in just one move, it goes from just being a defender on e6 to suddenly just deciding the whole game and delivering helping all sorts of checkmates on b7. It's just brutal. An ideal piece.
Yeah.
And all of that happened because the king was on h1 and allowed this to happen. And unfortunately, now that the bishop is there is nothing that white can do, and they resigned after rook g2. But I think they could have continued a bit more because there's a really nice mate at the end. So like
she
this.
Didn't want to see that.
Yeah. And you could even mate with the pawn like this.
Oh, that's cute.
In the middle. So this didn't happen, and the game ended at rook g2. But I thought it was a really instructive attack with some interesting ideas, and it's a very impressive must-win game from the Women's World Champion. And we'll see how the match goes this time, and we'll see who wins.
Yeah, curious about that. It's the very first time, and I just noticed it not too long ago, funnily enough, that we have a male Chinese champion and a female Chinese champion. Like the very first time ever, and then both from China. So
yeah, China must be doing something right about their chess program and funding and everything.
It seems so. Yeah.
It's good, but they've always been really strong teams at the Olympiads. They've won the Olympiads too, so it's not a surprise that there's so many strong players there. But it is exciting to see that even the women's title is going to stay in that country because it's both two compatriots playing each other.
Yeah, yeah. I saw the
It's
video where
really
they both give themselves a handshake. It was kind of
Mhm.
like a standoff photo, but they were just giggling. It was quite cute. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's follow the match and see how it goes.
Thank you so much, Svitlana. This was super informative. Thank you everybody for watching. We see each other soon enough. Bye bye.